Hello, welcome to Postcolonial Space. I'm Masood Raja, and today I'll briefly talk about some strategies that you can use while writing your dissertation, especially if you're feeling stuck and if you're feeling like you're not making enough progress given the time that you have. So these are just some of my suggestions based in my own personal experience, but also my experience of working with different candidates who have worked with me in finishing their doctoral dissertations. So here we go. So before even we get to the act of writing a dissertation itself, there are certain things that you should keep in mind before you get to that stage. And out of all those things, the most important aspect of it, other than your area of expertise or your area of interest, is your director or supervisor. When you're choosing your directors or supervisors, if you have a choice in the matter, don't just go for whether they are the biggest name in their field or whether it would be good for you to have their name on your dissertation. The most important thing that you should look for and research and ask others about is as to how do they treat their candidates. You could have the best scholar on any subject in your department, but if their reputation is that they don't give any support, scholastic or emotional to their candidates, or they don't care about their candidates, then you are setting yourself up for a very hard time. So if you have a choice, ask around and choose a director who is supportive and who is willing to spend the time with you to guide you throughout the whole process. Now remember, writing a dissertation is not a fire and forget process. It's a process in which your supervisor or your director should be working with you closely and should be there to give you academic but also emotional support when they know that you're dealing with life, besides writing a dissertation. So that's a very important point to keep in mind. As far as how to choose a topic, how to get to a point where you're writing a dissertation, I have videos on it. Just look at my playlist on academic writing and you'll be able to find it there. So now going on to this particular situation where you've already done the preliminaries. You have a committee, you have a director, you have an approved topic, right? But you're stuck, right? You somehow cannot bring yourself to write. It has become kind of an emotional drain on you. So what I'm sharing with you are some of the strategies to cope with it. And the first thing to keep in mind, and always remind yourself, is that writing a dissertation is just a step. Remind yourself, it's just a step. It's not a culminating point of your career. My director actually advised me that it's just a step. What did she mean by it? It's a step to finishing your education and then attempting to enter the field as a professional. It's a step to that. So the end point isn't to write a perfect dissertation. The main aspect of this entire experience is to write something defendable and to take that step so that you're done with it and move on and build your career and build your scholastic repertoire as a scholar. So remind yourself, it is just a step in your progression as a scholar, but pragmatically a step to finish your education and enter a given field as a professional. So number one, it's a step, just a step. Now the second thing to keep in mind is that you are the expert on what you're writing. Not necessarily that you know more than your supervisor, but the thing is your supervisor has his or her or their own area of expertise. But you're the one who have researched this particular topic in depth. So be confident about it. You have mastered by now the main debates of your field because you took your comprehensive exams, right? You have a supporting director, and then you are expert on the topic that you're writing about. Write like an expert. Think like an expert. Stop thinking like a student. You are by this time a scholar in your own right. A dissertation is you expressing yourself, right? And what you're expressing is what you have researched, what you have read about, what you have studied. So don't be hesitant in having your own opinions, in writing what you feel you know, right? But keep reminding yourself, I'm not just a graduate student, I'm an expert. That would help you academically in assuming the persona of an academic writer, but also emotionally in terms of thinking that you are in control of what you're writing. So that's the second thing, to constantly remind yourself that you are an expert on what you are writing about because you have worked hard to research, to articulate your assumptions, and now you are setting about to write about them. Remind yourself. So number one, what was that? It's just a step. And number two, you are the expert on whatever you're writing in your dissertation. Keep these two things in mind and we'll move on to the third one. Okay, we talked about, how to get your advisor, that writing a dissertation is just a step, right? And you are the expert on it. And the next thing to keep in mind and to constantly keep reminding yourself is that you are not writing a book. A dissertation is not a book. So don't think as if you're writing a book, an 8-chapter book, thoroughly researched or not. A dissertation at its best, most institutions will ask you an introduction, 3 chapters, and a conclusion. So you're not writing a book. Don't set yourself up for writing a book. Okay? You're writing a dissertation. Look at how your department or your institution even defines it. Where I got my PhD at Florida State, we had to have an introduction and 3 chapters that were loosely connected to each other. They didn't even have to be connected to the main theme of the introduction. They had to be loosely connected. They had to be from the area of specialization that we were working on, but they could be loosely connected to that theme. So look at your institutional parameters and see what is permissible within that, what would constitute a dissertation. But one thing that you should constantly remind yourself that it's not a book. Now there is a reason that we start thinking about our dissertation as a book. A couple of reasons. One is because we've got to that point after having read a lot of books. So we are assuming that what we are writing has to ipso facto emulate that style, right? And two, at the back of our mind, eventually someday we want to convert that dissertation into a book, right? That's why we think of it as a book. But I'll get to that point next, right? Think of it only as a dissertation, right? You will get, if you get a tenure track job, let's say in the United States, after you finish your dissertation, for which you must first finish your dissertation, you'll get 6 years to convert that dissertation into a book, right? You don't have 6 years right now. So do not think of your dissertation as if it's a book. It's okay to think that it could become a book, but do not write a book. Write a dissertation which is more manageable. Constantly remind yourself that it's a dissertation, it's just a step. You are the expert on it, and you're not writing a book, you're writing a dissertation. So this is the third tip that I can give you based in my own experience of having written my own dissertation but also having worked with quite a few graduate students who finished and went on to, become great and wonderful scholars in the field. So let's move on to the next step. So another important thing to keep in mind is that you are not writing a perfect work. No book is perfect. Okay, we are human beings. We can never produce perfection. Do not get entrapped in this idea that every sentence and every text has to be perfect. No. You're writing a good work which will still have errors even after you have edited it and reviewed it 100 times. So do not be a perfectionist. Do not try to write a perfect work. What you're trying to do is write the best work that you can under the circumstances within the time and material constraints that you have. But keep reminding yourself, I'm not trying to write a perfect book. I'm trying to write what? Something that is a step to what? To entering the profession, right? Something that isn't a book, right? And doesn't need to be absolutely perfect. So that's another important thing to constantly keep reminding yourself, right? So that you do not bog down, okay? And this is an important thing to keep in mind. It's not perfect. It doesn't have to be perfect, right? It has to be defendable. So keep this in mind. So the final point, which is really important, is keep track of your emotional health. Do not isolate yourself. Rely on people around you. Let them help you. Okay? But constantly live your life while you're writing a dissertation. Don't let the dissertation take over your life, right? Because if you do that, it's not going to help your writing process. Go for a walk, have a hobby, talk to your friends, talk to people you trust. If you are stuck and you're not making a headway, you alone don't have to solve it, right? Talk to your supervisor. Talk to people you trust. Do not emotionally and physically isolate yourself. That's not how a scholarly project ought to work. So remember, you are not alone. You have friends. Those friends may not be there every moment of a day for you, but they will be there for you to hear you out. Reach out to some of them and say, hey, I've been writing all day. I'm not making a lot of headway. Let's go out, right? Let's meet up for drinks, for a cup of tea, or whatever you enjoy in the company of your friends. Stay social. Give yourself breaks. Let others help you. And most importantly, ask for help, right? So let me go over what we just talked about once again. A dissertation is just a step towards entering the profession. The earlier you finish it, the better it would be. It's not a book. You're not really writing a book. You'll get a chance to write a book when you become a professional, right? As an academic. It doesn't have to be perfect, right? And let people help you. Don't isolate yourself, right? Keep that in mind. And take care of your emotional health while you're writing it. Stay social. Stay focused on your dissertation as well. But do not be afraid to reach out to your friends, reach out to your family, and especially to reach out to your advisors and supervisors, asking them for help. So these are some of the steps that I think I have advised my students to follow over the years. These are the steps that worked for me when I was in that situation. Writing a dissertation is not an easy job, but it's not an impossible task. And if you keep some of these things in mind, maybe, it will help you if you're stuck in the process. If you have practiced something else that was exceptionally helpful to you, feel free to share that in the comments so that the others can benefit from it. But these were all some of my thoughts about this topic. I hope it was useful to you. I will continue producing such videos, and I'm deeply grateful for your support. If you haven't already done so, please feel free to subscribe to the channel, become a member, support this video. You have all those options. I am delighted that you're a part of my life, and I'm grateful for that. I will now see you next time. Until then, as always, from me to you, peace and love.